According to The Hill, tensions between the Trump administration and California Governor Gavin Newsom escalated on June 9th, as former President Trump voiced support for potential action by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, involving Governor Newsom. Former President Trump commented, "If I were Tom Homan, I might go ahead with it. Gavin is someone who enjoys being in the spotlight. I actually like Gavin. He's a decent person. It's just unfortunate that he doesn't quite have the leadership skills needed to handle the job effectively." Earlier, Tom Homan, former head of U.S. Border Enforcement, warned that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, could take action against individuals who interfere with immigration enforcement efforts in Los Angeles, including local officials. California Governor Gavin Newsom and former Vice President Mike Pence later engaged in a public exchange on social media platform X in response to President Trump's remarks. Newsom wrote, "A former U.S. president just called for the arrest of a sitting governor. I had hoped this kind of rhetoric would never be seen in America. It shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This is a line that should never be crossed. It's a step in a very dangerous direction." Vice President Pence responded, "Then do your duty. That's all we're asking." Governor Newsom replied, "It's your side that needs to do its duty. Everything was fine until the president got involved. Cancel the National Guard deployment and return control to California." On the same day, U.S. Northern Command, NORTHCOM, confirmed the deployment of 700 U.S. Marines to Los Angeles, further increasing the military presence in the city, following President Trump's earlier order to send 2,000 National Guard troops. According to NORTHCOM, the 700 Marines, from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, and the 1st Marine Division, will work alongside National Guard forces already stationed in Los Angeles to help protect federal personnel and property. All deployed service members have received training in de-escalation tactics, crowd control, and appropriate use of force protocols. The city of Los Angeles is experiencing its 4th consecutive day of unrest, as California Governor Gavin Newsom has pledged to take legal action against the Trump administration in an effort to block the deployment of federal National Guard troops to the city. Overnight looting occurred in multiple areas across Los Angeles, including the downtown district. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, authorities arrested 31 individuals over the weekend on a range of charges, including robbery, assault on officers with dangerous weapons, and attempted arson involving incendiary devices. 5 officers were injured during the confrontations, and at least 5 vehicles were set on fire. Meanwhile, the Trump administration defended its decision, stating that the situation in Los Angeles was becoming unmanageable and that federal support was necessary to assist with immigration enforcement efforts. On the social media platform X, former President Trump referred to the demonstrations as migrant riots, claiming that Los Angeles was being overrun by undocumented immigrants and criminals. He also announced that individuals participating in protests while wearing masks could be subject to arrest. President Trump stated, "We made the right decision in sending the National Guard to address the unrest that has been stirred up in California. Without this action, Los Angeles would have been completely destroyed." Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonnell noted that the protests initially began peacefully but escalated after additional groups joined. He admitted that the National Guard may not have been necessary at first, but said the situation now requires reassessment. The unrest began following federal immigration raids across Los Angeles County starting on June 6th. Several areas were declared unlawful assemblies, and at least 2 more protests were scheduled for June 9th. Authorities are closely monitoring the situation amid growing concerns about potential violence. National Guard troops faced off with protesters in Los Angeles after being deployed under orders from President Donald Trump. Several dozen guardsmen, accompanied by Department of Homeland Security personnel, moved to disperse a crowd gathered outside a government building in the heart of downtown. Tensions spilled into the surrounding streets, where demonstrators chanted, "ICE out of LA." The chant referred to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, the federal agency that launched immigration raids across Los Angeles on June 6th, an operation that triggered days of sustained protests throughout the city. U.S. Northern Command later confirmed that 2,000 National Guard troops had officially begun deployment across the region. On June 8th, President Trump referred to the ongoing demonstrations in the city as riots. Speaking to the press in New Jersey, he warned that force could be used against protesters who spit at police officers or National Guard personnel. President Trump stated, "If we see a situation that's dangerous to the country and to our citizens, We will act very, very strongly to protect law and order. Security personnel were also present in Paramount, a southeastern area of Los Angeles near a Home Depot store, where tensions arose between demonstrators and law enforcement on June 7th. California Governor Gavin Newsom criticized President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles, calling it unlawful and a violation of state sovereignty. He demanded the withdrawal of the 2,000 federal troops and wrote on social media, "Don't give Donald Trump what he wants. Speak out. Stay calm." Footage from the scene on June 8th showed at least half a dozen military vehicles and riot shields positioned around a federal building where, according to the Department of Homeland Security, approximately 1,000 demonstrators had gathered earlier. A spokesperson for the Los Angeles Police Department confirmed that 27 people were arrested for refusing to disperse during protests in the downtown area. Under federal law, the president can deploy military forces in response to civil unrest. When asked on June 8th whether he was invoking that authority, President Trump responded, "That depends on whether there is an insurrection. The demonstrations have primarily occurred in areas governed by Democratic officials. Census data indicates that a significant portion of Los Angeles's population is of Hispanic descent and foreign-born." Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of Defense issued a warning that Marine forces stationed at Camp Pendleton remain on high alert. In a social media post on June 8th, he stated, "There is room for peaceful protest, but no tolerance for attacks on federal agents carrying out their duty. The National Guard and U.S. Marines, if necessary, are prepared to operate alongside ICE in ongoing enforcement efforts." On the same day, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum openly criticized the U.S. government's actions, condemning the raids and troop deployments. Speaking at a public event, she said, "We do not agree with addressing immigration issues in this way. The problem cannot be solved with violence, but through dialogue and comprehensive reform." Tensions continue to rise as Washington threatens to cut significant portions of federal funding to California. What began as a legal and political debate over immigration has now spilled onto the streets in the form of direct confrontations. Footage circulating on social media shows demonstrators being detained and pinned to the ground as riot police erect barricades. In one clip, a woman is heard crying out, "My husband was arrested this morning. I don't know where he is." Unconfirmed reports that ICE agents were rounding up undocumented immigrants at a Home Depot hardware store appear to have sparked the protests. According to the BBC, demonstrations opposing deportation raids began on June 6th and escalated rapidly over the following days. The Department of Homeland Security stated that protests in the suburban area of Paramount were triggered by misinformation. While several undocumented individuals were reportedly detained, DHS clarified that these arrests were made by other agencies, not ICE. Still, the rumors led to panic in Paramount, a city where 82% of residents are of Hispanic origin. Demonstrators reportedly threw stones and improvised incendiary devices at law enforcement. In response, officers deployed tear gas, rubber bullets, and smoke grenades to restore order. The unrest in Paramount has now become a flashpoint, further intensifying the volatile situation across Los Angeles. Tensions escalate in Los Angeles as National Guard deployed amid immigration crackdown. On June 6th, President Donald Trump invoked his federal authority to deploy the National Guard, an action typically reserved for state governors. The decision marked a dramatic escalation in California's ongoing immigration crisis. By the third day of protests, National Guard troops had already clashed with demonstrators in a park across from a Home Depot store. Tensions ran high, with one man shouting at the troops, "You are not welcome here." Some protesters took to graffiti, spray painting profanities targeting ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, on nearby walls. The outrage followed ICE's announcement that it had detained 118 undocumented immigrants in the Los Angeles area within a single week, including 5 individuals identified as gang members. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti acknowledged rising public fear and called for calm, emphasizing, "Everyone has the right to protest peacefully, but violence and destruction are unacceptable." Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the immigration raids as cruel. According to his spokesperson, Newsom had a 40-minute phone call with President Trump on June 6th, though the contents of that conversation remain undisclosed. As of now, the situation in the city of Paramount, the epicenter of the unrest, has begun to stabilize. However, scattered clashes between protesters and law enforcement persist near the original protest site at Home Depot. The air in the area remains thick with tear gas and smoke. Local reports indicate that around 80% of Paramount's population is of Hispanic descent, adding further sensitivity to the government's aggressive immigration stance. President Trump has vowed a record-breaking wave of deportations and the complete shutdown of the U.S.-Mexico border. The White House has reportedly set a goal for ICE to detain at least 3,000 undocumented individuals per day, though such ambitions are expected to face serious legal challenges. This is no longer just a standoff between protesters and police. It's a confrontation over identity, human rights, and how America chooses to define itself. As the tear gas clears and the streets fall silent, the bigger question remains: what kind of country does America truly want to be?